Assalamualaikum, Professor Ansari, can you hear me?
Yes, Zohaib, I can hear you. Walaikum salam.
Yeah, sorry, I was having some audio issues. Seems like it's figured out.
Yeah, you are loud and clear. Yeah, so I think we have about 30 people on this session, and we could probably begin soon. Whenever you are ready, I will introduce you and then we can start the proceedings.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you ask for.
Sure. So let me take a couple of minutes to introduce you. And I might have a slightly older bio, so please correct me if something is inaccurate or needs to be updated. So it gives me great pleasure.
Azim sir, just a second, sir. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Zohaib Hameed. Zohaib is a technical product manager and RF hardware specialist at 3M in the Corporate Research and Systems Lab, St. Paul, USA. He has been leading and managing a global team as a product owner to develop new 3M technologies in the RF market, prominently in 5G. Wireless charging, RFID, and wireless sensor market. Zohaib has a BTech in ECE from the National Institute of Technology, Warangal. After that, Zohaib got a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Alberta, Canada. So during his PhD, he designed and successfully implemented several chip tape-outs of integrated RF energy harvesting circuits. I really have no idea what this is, but looks very impressive. He also worked as an intern at 3M before he started his job there. Apart from all the wonderful technical stuff that he does, Zohaib also likes hiking and electronic projects in his free time. So, it's my pleasure again to welcome Zohaib, and I look forward to hearing him. By the way, also a very important point I want to emphasize for the people on this particular session is that, this is your opportunity to be interactive, ask as many questions as you can. Zohaib has a ton of experience, both on the corporate side as well as on the academic side. And so any questions that you have relating to doing a PhD, you should be able to ask here, and Zohaib will be very happy to answer. I will also hang around, and if I can, contribute in any fashion, I'll be happy to do so. Over to you, Zohaib.
Thank you, Professor Ansari. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I do not have access to the chat window while I'm presenting. So Professor Ansari, whenever, I think I'm gonna take a pause after a couple of slides and then probably will move towards you and we can take questions if you seem appropriate.
Sure, whenever you think, you are ready to ask questions, just, you tell that and we will try to monitor the chat. In fact, we can even encourage the students to unmute themselves when asked and ask the question directly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, hey, everyone. I'm Zohaib, and Professor Ansari gave a very nice introduction. So currently, I am, as Professor Ansari mentioned, I am a technical product manager. I was a development team member before, just working on designing projects as part of the team member. And couple of years ago, I switched role, and now I basically lead a global interdisciplinary team of data scientists, hardware engineers, software engineer, AI folks, application engineers. So it's a exciting job, and why I wanted to mention this is my PhD was pure hardware electronics, so it was like chip designing. I did several K-pods during my PhD, and now my role is not really very hardware related. I am involved both in the software aspect of the project as well as the hardware aspect of the project. So just wanted to make this clear that it doesn't mean that whatever field you're completing your PhD on, uh, that will be the field when you will be working. And it's pretty easy to enhance your learning and then try to be in a more interdisciplinary kind of a role. So I just wanted to mention that. And uh, I think couple of things I want to mention before I start, the presentation. So during the course of presentation, feel free to submit questions in the chat window. And after every 4 to 5 slides, I'll take a pause to answer the questions. And if an answer to the question is in the later part of the presentation, I will indicate that to you, and we can follow up to the question at that time. So the topics I will be discussing today is applicable for both masters as well as PhD programs. So when I say master, master could be course-based master or thesis-based master. So there are two types of master, and PhD is like a usual PhD under a supervisor. So everything is applicable for masters as well as PhD. There are certain things, and I will indicate at that time certain criteria which has more weightage for PhD program or thesis-based master. So I'll indicate at that time. But otherwise, everything what I'll be mentioning is for all the three things, like course-based master, thesis-based master, and then PhD program. So with that into account, let's move on to our to the talk. So today's talk, as you all know, is how do I apply for higher studies in US, Canada? What does it take, and how should the application look like? So before going into the depth of this graduate application process, it is important to ask yourself whether you should be applying to a graduate school or not. So I think let's take a step back and reflect on some of the reasons you guys might or everyone might have some of the reasons to apply. So what I could think about the reasons over here are first of all, if someone who is doing an undergraduate has done some project on circuit design, they are also interested in machine learning and things like that, or you're interested in combination of topics like machine learning for medical application or circuits for image processing. So you are really passionate about that topic, you really enjoy that field, and you want to enhance your learning in that field. So that is a very strong motivation to apply to higher studies, either master or a PhD program. The second reason I can think about is you're enjoying research, you're a creative person, and then you want to not just stop at bachelor's and just do a job, but you want to enhance your learning and ensure that you are continually advancing in your career. So sometimes what I've realized is if you just do bachelor's, your learning and knowledge is restricted, and it becomes difficult to when you are joining a company, basically in United States, a good company, and you are doing some product development, it not having a higher or advanced degree could be a problem in terms of career advancement. So if you want to make sure that you are advancing in your career, applying to a grad school is a good idea. And of course, like, who doesn't want more money? So if you want to earn more money, education is like one of the way, like getting a master's and advanced degree and then working is a good way of starting with a good salary. So these are some of the good motivation. to apply. And there's nothing wrong in that. It could be a combination of these reasons. What I also want you guys to reflect on is reasons. I think these should not be the only reason you should be applying to grad school. So first of all, what I would say is, and I have seen this is quite typical sometimes in India, like where your parents want you to go to grad school and just like get out of India, and they are like, oh, grad school is a good way. Just go on and do education, and you're really not motivated. You're not interested in research, or even like I'm not saying even research. Like you're not interested in doing advanced degree per se. So I would recommend, if that is the reason, not to that is the only reason not to go to grad school. Then second thing I would say is, if you really like if you're if I mean I don't think you should know everything what you want to do in your life. So for example, for me, when I was in my undergrad, uh, I knew that I want to do higher studies, but I really didn't know what field I want to do, where I would be doing a job, whether I should be a professor or whether I should work in the corporate world. So that is okay. Some kind of uncertainty is okay because that is expected. But if you're clueless about what you want to study, what you want to do after you earned an advanced degree, and this is the only reason you're going for higher studies, is just like getting out of India, and then some other reason you want to satisfy your parents or friends or things like that, then I would say it's not a strong reason to go to grad school. And the reason I keep on mentioning this is like especially for your PhD program or thesis-based master, research is a part and parcel of your day-to-day life. And if you're not really enjoying what you do, it really is not sustainable, and you will give up at some point, and it will be a wastage of your money and time. You could explore much better opportunities in India, and do something which you're interested in. So I would say just think about why you want to go to grad school. And again, I want to say that seeking higher salary and good quality of life can be a great motivator to apply for grad school. So there is nothing wrong in that. However, that should not be the only reasons to apply. So it should be a combination of other things. And as I've mentioned, so just wanted to reflect on these things before we move to the actual presentation. So as you can see over here, this is the entire graduate application in a very high level buckets. I'm assuming now that we have determined we want to apply to a grad school in US or Canada, and I'm going to talk about Canada in the later half of the presentation. So preparation of the graduate application is a important and I would say a very important step for your whole admission process. And so for the graduate applications, some of the things that are important are listed in this slide. And in the next few slides, what I'm going to do is I'll be explaining in detail each of these bullet points. So the entire presentation will be like explanation of each of these points in much detail. And what I would say is, I'll go through academics, for example, what are important in academics, GRE score, what kind of research you should be involved with, and what level of research you should be involved in including projects, internship, or conference papers and things like that. And again, I'm gonna emphasize on what is more important for PhD program, and what is more important for thesis-based or course-based masters, and so on and so forth. But this is a very general high-level overview of what you should be looking into graduate application. So let's start first on the academics, as I mentioned over here. So the first question that will come to your mind is, what is a good GPA? I have a GPA of 8. I have a GPA of 7.5 out of 10. I'm a 9 pointer. So on and so forth. So what I would say over here is, even if you are a 9 pointer, that doesn't mean that you're going to get the best university in US or Canada. or even if you're a 7-pointer, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get into a good university in US and Canada. So the entire application package is important. Academics is one part of out of it. So I would still say this is something which you can control. So getting a good GPA is under your control, and you should try to get as good of a GPA as possible. But I would say that no GPA is so good that it will ensure that you're admitted to a university. The other thing I want to mention over here is this GPA requirements really vary a lot. So basically, some universities will be emphasizing a lot on academics, some of them will not, and you need to. I mean, to be on a safer side, it's always good to be having a good GPA, but you can always check the application requirement in terms of what are the minimum requirements for GPA, and you can contact folks who are already studying in the universities, your seniors, and at least get a sense of what do they pay more weightage on. But I would say sometimes they look into your courses. So even if you have a really good GPA, but if you're applying, for example, in machine learning related programs, so they will look into your undergraduate list of courses and see what are the grades for those relevant courses, and that can be a good factor as well. So think about that as well. And the other thing I want to also mention is when you go on their websites, they will mention what are the minimum GPA requirement. Most of the programs in there, they would say it's 3 out of 4, and our GPA system is not out of 4. So they will do some conversion. Not sure how exactly they would do. Some they will also mention sometimes on for India the requirement is 7 GPA or 7.5, or sometimes they do not. But my recommendation for even an average university is your GPA should at least be above 7 out of 10 for most of these for most of the universities. And again, I'm saying 7 out of 10 over here. It really, I mean, I do understand. So, for example, this is not as simple as it looks, right? So, for example, I did my bachelor's in NIT Warangal, and there the average GPA was around 7.5, 7 to 7.5, somewhere around that ballpark. I had friends in BITS Pilani, and BITS Pilani, as you all know, is one of the oldest and very reputed college. With BITS Pilani, I know the average GPA in BITS Pilani is 6 to 6.5. So really depends on university to university. Some universities it's like even 8 is an average, or so on and so forth. So what I would recommend is you should always mention in your application, put your rank. So you put your GPA in your statement of purpose or your resume. Mention that I stood in the top 5%, or my rank was 5 out of 100, just to give them context on what kind of where in the spectrum of ranking you stood. And I would also say that most of the professors in these universities are aware of these kind of like, for example, the GPA requirement, even though it is 7, if they are from this institute, it might not be as good as the other institute. So they have a good idea about what's up. So that's why they don't put all the weightage on academics, but it's in your benefit to make this as clear as possible in your application. So for example, if you are from BITS Pilani, I would be very careful, and then even if I have a GPA of 8, for example, and my rank is like third in the class or fifth in the class, I would mention that specifically in my resume, in my statement of purpose, and things like that, just to highlight that fact more. The second thing I want to talk about is GRE. So everyone knows that GRE is a big requirement for admission. And what the question that will come to your mind is, what is a good GRE score, right? So again, going back to the same analogy in terms of academics, what is a good GRE score? There's no GRE score which is which will ensure your admittance. So if you have a GRE score, for example, of 340 out of 340, that's amazing because it will give you a lot of, I mean, GRE score has a lot of weightage in your application, and it will highlight your application more than the other people. But then again, I would say this is not the only criteria. They are looking at your entire package. So again, no test score is as good, and the minimum score requirements will vary greatly with universities to university. Usually in science and engineering program, they tend to emphasize more than verbal, the quantitative section, so math and that part. With Indian students and with this cohort, or in general, like with any other undergraduate student in India, we do not have much problem with quant. So I would say quant is not the biggest pain point for us. Verbal will be the pain point in GRE. So I would say spend ample amount of time doing the verbal. And again, I would say if the score is less, then the other things will not matter. So for example, if it's out of 340, right? GRE is out of 340 and your score is really less, it is just around the minimum criteria which the university requires for admittance, then you will have a hard time convincing your supervisor or the admission committee that you are a great candidate, because your score are so low that they might not even take into account the other things. So I would again emphasize that getting a good GRE score is important, and this is something which is in your control in your application package, apart from academics. So spend ample amount of time for GRE preparation, and I would also say in your application package, sometimes a weakness in this area. So if your GRE score is really less, when I say really less, it is not as good as the other. So it is, so for example, average folks who are admitted to a program are getting a GRE score of 325 out of 340, and your GRE score is 315 or 320 or something like that. So you can overcome that weakness in that section of GRE by emphasizing or highlighting some other areas. So for example, if you have a strong research experience, or your academics are really good, you have done some great projects and things like that, so you can highlight and make your application package in that manner. So these are some of the things which you can do to control. But I would say at this point, don't think about it. If you haven't given GRE already, spend all your energy and time to prepare for this exam properly. And the last thing I want to mention over here is the GRE admission test. Do not take these tests, just be like, oh, I'm going to prepare for a month or 2 months, and I haven't prepared, but let's see, I can give it again. And so I would say don't go with that mindset. Give this as this is your final exam. Prepare it for a at least like 3 months, and I would say even go for like more than 3 months. So 6 months preparation is ideal kind of preparation. And I'm going to show you the timeline on when should you be giving GRE exam, when should you be applying, and all those things in the end. So I can show those things in the end, but I would say allow ample time, at least 3 months, and ideal would be around 6 months or so. And it really depends on person to person, but spend much time on the GRE in here. So this is the last section, and then probably we can stop for some time for questions. But I also want to talk about research in this. So when I say research, now this is very, very important for if you're applying for master's plus PhD program, or a combined PhD program, or things like that. So when you're applying for a bachelor's, even though they admit you to a master's program, you can always indicate if you're interested in PhD that you want to be admitted to a direct PhD program. For example, if you're really interested, you want to do PhD, you can say. And sometimes based on your research experience, project experiences, a supervisor can admit you directly to a PhD program. So that is one way. But the most normal way, or more or less, like I would say more common, is If you are interested in higher studies, you go to a master's program, and that master's program, if you're interested in PhD, you will do a thesis based master. So you will have a supervisor, you will work under him. If he sees you're a good candidate, he will recommend you, and then you can join into a PhD program under the same supervisor or someone else. So that is the usual route. Another route is just doing a course-based master. You're not at all interested in research. You just want to have an advanced degree, and you just want to do a course-based master. So that's another alternative. So for course-based master, this is not super important, like getting involved in research, I would say. For thesis-based master and for PhD, this is important because this is the only way where you show your potential supervisor that you're interested in his research. And research can be especially beneficial for fields that are constantly adapting, like science and technology. But it is not so important for other fields like mathematics and things like that. But I would still say that doing research, it will improve your chances. So there's no harm. So if you're applying for course-based master as well, if you have project experiences in your belt, if you have done some research, I mean, the best thing would be if you have published conference paper or journal paper, it will be a big benefit in your application package. So spend some time on this, show some evidence that you have some research experience. I would again say that most of the good universities in US and Canada, they are aware about IITs. They know all this branded school, IIT, triple IT, IASC, even like good NITs like Trichy and Warangal, Surathkal, and so on and so forth. So they know all about these ecosystem branded schools and things. So doing internship from branded school is good. It really helps in your package because they know that, okay, you have done from this, and they might even know the professor or so on and so forth. So I would say doing internship from branded school play a good role. Even from known companies, it's really good. It's a good way of highlighting your application package. But I would also say at the very minimum, do a research project with the faculty in your college. So I do understand it's sometimes very difficult to get internship into IIT professor. They are busy in terms of they are getting hundreds of application every week on, because I used to even do cold emails, like just sending to 10 professors and like, oh, I want to work under you, and they are receiving that from so many people. Sometimes it's really difficult to get into these branded school, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. I did not get into any internship from branded school, but if you are given an opportunity, do that from a branded school. If not, uh, at the very minimum, do projects with the faculty in your colleges. So apart from internship, go and talk to your professors, like, oh, I am interested under working on something, whatever he's teaching on. Try to find a problem statement, try to work with him, try to publish paper. And this is very important for like I would say for thesis based master, as well as for PhD. It is super important. Thesis based master, okay, like I mean, do at least a research project. Course based master, it's not very important, but this is always going to help you in your application process. So I'll still recommend doing this. And I would say publishing articles in IEEE papers or journal is a big plus. I did not have internship in any branded school during my undergraduate. What I did have is I had IEEE papers and journal publication during my third year. So by the time I was applying, I showed to them that, oh, I've already published this paper, it was accepted. I did a project under my professors in NIT Warangal. So it wasn't from any branded school like IITs or triple IT, but I did some project. I did some internship as well, but pretty like like a startup company, not really like a well-known company. So again, every application package is different. Someone might have something else, and they can highlight that in their package. So you should do a good job of creating that package, and it's your job to emphasize on what you think your admission committee should be looking at. So I would say do that. And the thing I would say is you need to start early. So research is not a thing where you decide, okay, I'm going to apply for grad school in 3 months, and that's it. I'm going to start doing research now. No, it doesn't work like that. You need to think about this like at least a year timeline. So this is a very good time for you because each one of you, as I think, most of you, as I think, are from third year, first semester exam. So you guys are getting done with your first semester exam. You would be applying most probably
Sir,
for.
so this is Varis, sir. And right now I'm in fourth year, and I'm thinking
Mhm.
to do some research paper in my with my and project professor. So so ये late हो गया है थोड़ा.
No, no.
अब
I mean, again, the ideal timeline I would say is if you're in third year and you don't want to have a gap. So, for example, right after your fourth year, you're done with your fourth year, and then you want to get admitted in the fall of that year.
yes, sir.
So, for that timeline, this is the ideal timeline. As you're saying, you're in fourth year, uh, and
Right
you
now,
would
I
not.
decided that I need to pursue my master's from abroad. That's why I have not focused on doing research in second year and third year. That was my biggest mistake. But now I am focusing how I can improve my profile so that I can get admission and top universities. Uh, uh,
Mhm.
uh, Also, I'm focusing on. So I have a talk with my professor. So they said that do some project papers, research paper on your project itself, so that it can improve your profile. So
Yeah, agree. So I would say that, so for example, most of the admissions happen for fall. So fall of next year, most of the admission deadlines are already gone. Like it's already December 11th. You would be applying for fall of 2023, for example, if you want to apply for a thesis-based master. The deadlines are for international students are usually around November and December. So you will not be applying for next year fall. You will be applying for fall of 2023. So in that case, you still have like 8 to 10 months to have project experiences and improve your resume and those things. So it's not late for that. I would still, if I was in your shoes, there might be a gap that you might be done with your fourth year by summer of next year, and the earliest you can get is fall of 2023. When I say fall, it is September of 2023. So during that time, what should I be doing? So I would still go on with your backup plan. Like if you're probably planning to do a job, continue with your job, and then once you get an admit, you can move on to higher studies. Or if you want to do something else, try doing that. But the ideal timeline for this is if you're in third year first semester, then this is a very good timeline. Even if in your fourth year, then it's going to help. Like I mean, it's never too late, but if you can start early, that's what I want to emphasize.
I'm thinking to apply for for January intake or March intake, that is in winter, so summer intake.
Yep.
So maybe there are chances that I can get admission. So, sir, right now it has been late, so that maybe there are very less chances to get admission. As I am in the fourth year and I'm starting my preparation for going abroad in the fourth year itself. Because
Varis, where are you from, Varis?
uh, I'm from Aligarh Muslim University, pursuing BTech from Aligarh Muslim University, AMU,
Computer science or EC?
in mechanical engineering.
Mechanical engineering. Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, so as Zohaib said, you have to most probably apply for next year instead of
Yes,
this year.
yes, sir.
And I think you will have 1 year to prepare, and you'll most probably get into a good university if you do what all Zohaib mentions in this talk.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
You want to do a master's in mechanical?
Yes, sir. Mechanical itself,
Okay.
uh, or industrial engineering.
Okay, very good. We can take this offline also, the specifics of your case, but listen to the remaining, session, and Inshallah, you'll get some very good pointers. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, agree. And as you said, Varis, one more thing I just want to add before I proceed is, even though what I'm emphasizing is fall admission, as you mentioned, there are winter admissions, but like if given, because I have seen the admission selection process as a student and working with my professor as well. So if you are doing a thesis-based master, most of the professors will be admitting you only for fall. Like fall is the time where they have vacancies, they're applying for projects. So I would say more than 80% of the admission happens for the uh, fall year. So they would be applying for fall. Winters they would select. It's a higher chance if you're doing a course-based master to get into a winter program. But for a research-based program, it's not likely that you would be admitted to a winter program. So
So,
again, yeah, it all varies.
someone said for GRE score doesn't matter for Canadian universities. It's true or not?
Yeah. So that is correct. GRE score does not matter for Canadian university. That is correct. So GRE is only for US universities. There are, in very rare cases, some very good university, probably in University of Toronto, or I've seen sometimes they have a GRE requirement, but I would say 99% cases, GRE is not required for Canadian university. You just need to do TOEFL or IELTS exam just to show that you are proficient in English. So I'm gonna talk about all that, but let's move on, and I can take questions at that time, and we can discuss more. So getting back to the research part, as I mentioned, start early. If you haven't started already, it's never too late. Start at the earliest. Talk to your professor and try to get some project. And again, this is important in your statement of purpose. So this makes your statement of purpose really strong. So we think sometimes that no one reads the statement of purpose. That is not at all true. Statement of purpose is one of the document they read for sure. I mean, most of the admission selection committee reads. Statement of purpose is basically you tell them why you want to do or work in that program or work under a professor or be part of that university. So doing research basically helps you tune your statement of purpose. So for example, you can say you basically make a story, and make a story as in like it's your real life story, that my passion for machine learning and my passion for circuit based thing led me to do these many projects and this research experience and this internship experience. And because of all of this, because of my experiences, I am interested in this research field and I deserve to get accepted. So it's making a case for yourself that okay, I am a strong candidate. It's not as if like just admit me because I'm a nice person or anything, but it's like I have the required credential and I will be an asset to your program. I will really advance your research and things like that. And how do you reflect your skill? You show that you have early on hands-on experience on their research. You have done projects. So again, I cannot emphasize enough, for research-based program, this is good. Course-based program, it still helps, but it's not super important in here. So I wanted to take a pause for questions. Should we take a couple of questions, Professor Ansari, before moving, or what do you think?
I I think it is a good idea to have some questions. So there is a question in the chat from Sayada saying uh, that could you please provide a timeline for everything to be done for admission in fall? And I think most students here are interested in course-based masters. So somehow
Yeah,
my
I agree.
okay, so
Yeah, so the timeline question, I would leave it to the end. I have a complete timeline, and I will talk about that timeline in the end, mainly because I want to show what are the
Zohaib, 1 second, Zohaib. Something happened and my face is there. So yeah, you should get rid of my face. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, please. Yes.
yeah. I just wanted to see everyone's. I mean, if people are showing their video, so that's why I came out of the
Okay.
presentation
Yes.
mode. Yeah. So I will show the timeline in the end, and I think I'll keep it at the end mainly because I want to talk about the whole process, application, what is there in the application apart from GRE research. So let's take that question in the end. If Sayeda has doubt in the end, we can come back to that question. So yeah.
Sure. And also, Zohaib, I guess, most of these students here are most probably just going to do an MS. And
Yeah.
so maybe keep that in mind in terms of, what do you emphasize?
Yeah, agree. So, and that's why I keep on saying, academics is very important for course based. Until now, what we have done, academics is very, very important. GRE is also very, very important. Research is not too much for course based program. Like even if you haven't done like papers or things like that, it's all fine. It's not a problem. But doing research will not in any way harm your application. So if you are given the opportunity, do something under your professor, put that in your resume, statement of purpose, but that's not going to be a big factor for course-based master. So yeah.
Any other questions from any other student here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Anas has one question and then Hanzala. Well, Hanzala, why don't you just ask first?
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Hello.
Go ahead, Hanzala.
Sir. Yes, sir. I have a question, sir. Sir, what is good to go for a master after college or to go for job after college? What is good?
So Hanzala, whenever anybody asks a question, please introduce yourselves, for 1 second to, tell where you are from, what you are doing.
Sorry, sir.
No,
Sir,
sorry की बात नहीं है, बोलिए आप जी.
Yes, sir. Myself, Mohammad Hanzala Khan. I am from Integral University, Lucknow, pursuing BTech Computer Science in 3rd year.
Okay. Okay, and your question was, is it good to aim for a job?
To go for the job after college or to go for MS after college?
Jay, I mean, that depends on what you really want to do in life, right? In the sense, if you remember, Zohaib initially said that MS makes sense only if you, if there are a set of conditions that you fulfill, which is you want to do an MS, you want to sort of, use the MS as a stepping stone for our jobs outside India. Or in fact, it could be even an MTech in India if you wanted to do it. But then again, you have to, first of all, enjoy studying and you should be willing to put in the preparation to do that. So that's a fundamental choice that you have to make depending upon what really interests you and what your conditions are. It's a difficult question to answer because there's no one answer to it. Depends on your interest, depends upon your context, your family situation, many other things. So we can talk about this later, maybe in your specific case. You can reach out to me or Zohaib or your own mentor, and we can sort of discuss that. There is a question from Sadia Nurain. Can one prepare for GRE on their own or coaching is advisable? So that's something that maybe you will talk about later. And then Anas says, is there any chance to get admission? Okay, so you want to take that, Zohaib? First, the question on GRE and coaching versus non-coaching.
Yep. So regarding GRE coaching, it can go either way, I would say. Like I've seen couple of my friends who have done GRE coaching, and there's nothing wrong in that. Personally, I did not do GRE coaching, and I know so many other people who were not like even really smart, or I would say like average student like me, so they did not take coaching and it was all good. So it really depends on your preference. What I would say is don't directly enroll in a coaching. First, try by yourself. If you think you're not able to do, not study properly or you're not doing a good job, I would say coaching helps you give structure. So one of the big advantage of coaching is once you have invested your money and like have dedicated person helping you out, dedicated time for tests, that gives you structure in life. Like you have deadlines and then you follow that deadlines. So in that way it helps. But if you can self monitor yourself, GRE is nothing which is like someone needs to teach you. No one needs to teach you that. Those are very simple math question. So quantitative section is so easy that it is so like it's a very basic math. So for quant you don't need at all. For verbal you might, but then there is no one who can teach you verbal. How you learn verbal is you memorize some of the words, you read books, you try to find out how to use those words in a sentence and things like that. So you can self learn all of these yourself, but then if you are not doing a good job of self monitoring yourself and then you're having difficulties in certain part, I would not discourage you from coaching. So yeah.
Yeah. So my advice on the GRE is for most of you, you have 1 year before you write it. And as Zohaib mentioned, the verbal portion is the most difficult for many Indian students, primarily because many Indian students don't read anything.
Sir,
I mean,
is it necessary to give mock every week for GRE preparation? And which mock test I need to prefer for preparation? Because as I was thinking for how I have to prepare for GRE, so I have seen paper also. Quant is easy, but what
yeah.
does it requires?
Yeah, I will answer this question for you. Zohaib can also answer. So basically, the verbal portion is the most difficult for most students. You need to focus on the verbal. In verbal, generally, the most difficult for many students is reading comprehension. That can only improve if you start reading. I'm not talking about one person here, but in general. And you need to start reading a variety of things. Okay, so it can't be just a novel. So you have to have fiction, non-fiction, technical stuff, non-technical stuff. Make it a habit to read on a daily basis. Newspaper, Scientific American, Wired magazine. There's a ton of stuff on the internet. MIT Technology Review. So you basically improve your reading muscle. That's very important. And this cannot be done in one day. It has to be done over the year. So that's number one. Second thing is, take a guide, Barron's guide or the official guide for the GRE. Do their practice test first. So the first thing you have to do is do it now. Take one practice test. See where you are. Figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. As Zohaib mentioned, again, it's fairly easy to do the quant portion. You'll probably do very well, but you'll realize that you really need to improve your verbal ability, and then you start working on it. And again, as Zohaib mentioned, it is quite possible to do it on your own, but if you want the structure of a coaching program, and that would help. And the last suggestion I would give is that, it is always good to prepare with a friend. GRE is such a thing that, if 2 or 3 people come together and start preparing, you can all motivate each other, ask each other, vocabulary words. It can become a very good habit to be focused on this particular journey. Okay? So that's my 2 cents. And Zohaib can add a lot more to it.
No, I have nothing to add. I think what Professor Ansari said is bang on. So, yeah.
Okay, there's another question. There is a question from Sadia, which is masters right after college. Is it advisable, or masters after working for a duration of time? So Zohaib has already answered this. If you can do it right after college, it's fine. But if you want to work a year or 2 and then do it also, that is also fine. Depends on how prepared you are to get into a good place right after college. If you haven't done anything till now and you think it is not possible to do it in the short time that is left, then you know work on it for an extra year and then you apply and you should be fine. Okay. Any other questions? You can go ahead, Zohaib, I think.
Okay, let me again share back my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Zohaib.
Okay, awesome. So I think I'm gonna rush through this section slightly more, mainly in the interest of time. But again, I am emphasizing the shortlisting universities is a big part of the graduate application process. So there are tons of universities in US, Canada. You are, I mean, you're allowed to apply for as many as possible, but mainly because of financial restriction and your focus, like you're preparing statement of purposes for each university. And it's not like one statement of purpose which you can use for everything. I would say you need to tailor your purpose, statement of purpose, and other things based on what university you're applying for. So shortlisting university is a big part of the application process, and you need to do this smartly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you like example scenarios in the next few slides on how does a usual person go around and select what universities they will apply in, and then there is nothing wrong in that. But I'm going to also propose a different scenario of how we can do that in a different manner. And this is what I did. And based on whatever is your preference, based on combination of what I'm proposing, you might get other ideas on how do we select. So I just wanted to spend some time on this part since I think most of the folks just ignore this part and they're like, oh, I'll do this. And then university part comes in and they're like, they haven't done any research on that. So I would say spend some time on this as well, like what exactly you want to work on. If you're doing a thesis based master or PhD, what research group you want to work under. If you're just doing a course based master, still what university you want to work, you want to study, and what university will be good in terms of getting a job after the university, after you're done with your course based master. So the first method, and which is a very common method, everyone does this, and I do it all the time, even now, just to look into ranking and how universities are performing. Is you go to Google, you're like best universities in USA for machine learning based this program, something like that, and it will pop you up of names of top 50 universities, and you're like, okay, these are good universities, and for machine learning based program, and I want to stay in New York. I want to stay around California. Based on that, you're just selecting top universities, top couple of universities, top mid, like some middle universities, and some low ranked universities, just to keep like a balance of all the universities. So it's a fine way to search school, but I would suggest a different strategy because like I find that we can do much more than just going into universities and doing that. I think this is a good way, especially for course-based master. So I think for course-based master, you can still do this. Try to find out what courses you want to do it, what universities are good in that field. It's pretty good. The other thing you should pay attention for course-based master is whatever university you're working, like are studying under, you will usually find local jobs. It's better to get into a university. For example, if you want to work in technology related area, you want to work in Silicon Valley, like Bay Area and things like that. If you are given an opportunity, go for a master's in California or go for a master's somewhere in Boston. So these are the tech area where there are a lot of companies in that field. It is advantageous to basically do a master's based program or any higher studies in a universities where there are a lot of companies around, mainly because after you graduate, it's much easier to find a job in that manner. So that is one thing you should take into account. That's not necessarily true though. So for example, if someone does in University of Minnesota, which is in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is not very close to all these tech players, but I know they have campus recruitments where they move to Florida or Boston. So you can still find opportunities. But I think if given a preference, try to find local universities like around California or Boston if you're working in that field or related field. So this is one method, and that is fine. What I'm proposing now is a second method. This is especially true for thesis-based master's and PhD program. You have to think about you're going to work in a research group or like when you're doing a master's or PhD. So you need to ask yourself these questions: that what topic or combination of topic interests me the most? What are the career opportunities after graduation? What are the salary expectations and things like that? So once you have figured out these things, like what kind of salary I'm expecting, what careers do I want, what topics I am really interested in, and things like that. So for example, I'm giving a scenario of my case. Like I am an RF engineer, I from the ECE field, and I did my PhD in that. So one example scenario is I'm interested in RF hardware or system engineering ECE related program. So taking that into account, and again, this doesn't mean that this is only applicable for ECE. If someone is interested in machine learning, the whole thing which I'm going to walk through is applicable even for that scenario. So what you could go and do is, if you're interested in some related field, there are things in LinkedIn. You go to a LinkedIn job search if you are an RF engineer. So for example, I'm an RF engineer. I will go in LinkedIn, go to job section, search for RF engineering jobs in United States, and I'll find a list of companies. I can see where most of the companies are located. I can see what companies employ the most. I have a good feel around what are their requirements. So Amazon is hiring RF engineer. Apple is hiring RF engineer. Qualcomm is hiring RF engineer. Microsoft is doing so. I have a very good idea now that okay, there are departments in this. It's not a declining field per se. Like people are hiring it, they need it as part of their portfolio. These companies would be doing it. I'll go to Glassdoor. I'll look for salaries for that job. So, for example, I want to earn a lot of money. Like I have some money in mind. I want to do this or that. And if I'm working in some field, probably that is not a high paying field than the other field. So you need to take these things into account. Look for salaries. Look for what type of careers are available. What companies you might work in. The second thing what I will propose is you need to find a good research group for yourself, especially for thesis based masters and PhD. Your success depends a lot on the success of your research group. So it's not like you are doing really well and the research group is not good. Doesn't happen like that. So if your research group is good, you will kind of do good because everyone works in a collaborative environment. So what I would propose is if you're doing a thesis-based master or if you are interested in higher studies, you go to Google Scholar. You can search related to fields. So I'm searching for RF related fields. So label RF. It could be label machine learning, label data science, label whatever is your interest, digital design, FPGA, whatever it is. You will find some of the top researchers in this field. And I would say citation is a good indicator of how much relevant the professor's research is, how well known he is, what is the quality of his research, and things like that. So you get a good indicator of a professor. And I'm not saying this is the only way. If you are interested in working in some other research group, for example, you can come back to Google Scholar, do a search about that professor, look at his papers and things like that. So I would still encourage doing that. So out of no reason, I decide I want to work under this professor, Ali Niknajat. He's from UC Berkeley, very well known in our field, RF engineering. His expertise around RF, analog, mixed signal design, millimeter wave, high frequency design, and things like that. So I select him and I want to pursue what more can I learn about this professor, whether he is a good fit for me or not. So what I'll do next is click on his link, go to Google Scholar over here, and I'll see his recent citations. And you can see he is not he is increasing per se. So this is basically from early this year. I took a snapshot of this, and that's why his citation seems less over here. But what is indicative over here is he has been doing research and it is on an increasing trend. It is pretty much similar. He has great amount of citations, great amount of papers coming in every year. So what I would encourage then is read some of his work and think about, do you want to do this for the rest of your life? When I say rest of your life, is it's a stretch, but at least for 5 years, 6 years down the line, you want to specialize in that field or not. Go around, read his paper, read his recent paper coming out of the research group, and so basically go for year 2021. What is he doing right now, and whether you're interested in that or not. So this is very relevant for thesis based masters and PhD. For course-based master, this is not needed. So I'll just skip this step if you're doing a course-based master. I'm going to directly jump in. I don't think I need to pause for a question right now. I'll pause after a couple more slides. The second thing you need to look into if you're doing a thesis-based master and PhD is size of the research group. So if you decide I'm interested in this field, I want to work with this professor, you should also take into account what is the size of the group. If it is just couple of people in the group, that means that professor is not really working in some he might be doing some one-off project, and there's nothing wrong in doing one-off project, but then it is difficult as a PhD to get resources for that project. He might not be very well known, and it's a balance between size of the research group versus keep so if a professor is very busy, then it's not good for you. If the professor is not at all busy, then it is not good for you. So you need to keep a balance. So size of a research group is indicative of how good the professor is, how much money he has, how much financially he can sponsor you, and things like that. So what I would encourage is, once you have determined, go to professor's webpage. They usually are affiliated to a lab. You can find a list of current graduate student, who are the postgraduate student, who are the previous graduate students, and things like that. So just going by the group, you can see if it's a diverse group, you can collaborate, and it's a good collaborative kind of environment. You can also pay attention to how established the past group members are in academia and industry. So, for example, some of the professors mention what their past students have done and what are they doing right now. So that is also indicative of how what students do after they graduate. I would again also say that you should pay some more attention around for example over here I'm not saying like profiling per se, but it is important to know that if it's an Indian professor, for example, Indian origin professor, all the students are of Indian background. It might not be a good I mean, I would not be too encouraged to work in that research group. So usually what I've seen is a group with a lot of ethnic diversity will is a better collaborative place. So if it's just one kind of cultural group in a research group, then it's an indication usually of not a great environment for collaboration per se. So these are some of the things, subtle things, which you should keep into account. That is the group diverse, if they are collaborative kind of folks, if their papers are coming from different universities, and things like that. So take that into account. Take other thing that you can take into account is what are the previous students doing. So go to previous graduate students page. If you find that student has worked under the professor, do some Google search on. So for example, I found this guy, Amin or Babian, and he did his PhD 10 years before. And I'm interested, like, okay, he did his PhD 10 years. Is he still working in that field, or is he doing something else? Just I wanted to do a Google search. So I did a Google search on his name, and I found that, okay, he's now a professor in Stanford. And just looking at his group is pretty big now. So this is a very good indication that a professor, you're doing your PhD, after 10 years down the line, he was able to go ahead, establish his own group, and they are doing some good research. So established alumni can also be a good indicator of how good the professor is and whether there is opportunity working in that professor. So this should be an iterative process for all the research groups. So don't do it for one. Sometimes you will not find much information. For some professor, you'll find a lot of information, but spend some time doing this research, because in the end you are going to work under that professor, spend a lot of time under that professor. So I'll encourage you to spend some time on that, especially for thesis based master and PhD program. Again, course based master, do spend some time on what university you need to work on or you want to study in, what are the job opportunities, what are the salary, and things like that. But don't spend too much time on research group per se and all those things. So that is not too
Yeah,
critical.
if I can interject, Zohaib, you know, one thing about people who just want to do an MS and then do a job, I think it is important for you to understand where students are being placed from that university and what type of jobs do they get and what are the salaries that they basically get. Because if that is your only focus, then you need to really understand that. So you have to probably reach out to the student affairs office there, figure out or go to the website, look at the placement. If you have seniors in a particular university, you reach out to them to try to figure out how easy or difficult it is to get placed from that particular university. Do companies come there? How do people get jobs? What proportion of their graduates get a job immediately after completing the program, and how many get placed maybe in 1 or 2 months after the program. So these are all things that are very important if you are focusing mostly on non-research based MS experience. Uh, and also you should understand that once you join the MS, again, getting a job is exactly the same as what you have to do, whether you are doing it now or later. So you have to be sort of, good in all those aspects that are needed in getting a job. Okay. So for computer science, it would mean data structures, algorithms. For machine learning, it would mean sort of, knowing the Python ecosystem and the important algorithms involved in it, etc. So basically what I'm saying here is that if you are interested in a non-research based MS, you need to figure out the placement process in the place that you are going to. You need to figure out the type of jobs people get and the type of support that you get in terms of getting those jobs, because that would be very critical. And maybe you need to reach out to some alumni. If some of them are from your university, it is great, but you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and try to figure this out.
Yeah. Yep, makes sense. Yep. Thank you, Professor Ansari. And the last thing I just want to mention before I move on to the graduate application process, uh, I can also go one step ahead and I mean, if you're too interested, and I was interested at my point, I wanted to know the professor which I was working under, does he have enough money to sponsor me, or whether he is busy, whether what kind of program he's getting money from. So in US, National Science Foundation is a great place where most of the professors who are working in universities, they will be applying for a research grant to National Science Foundation, and they get some money from National Science Foundation, and then they sponsor students using that grant. So for example, this professor, the same professor I was talking about, Ali Niknajal, he got a grant of $450,000 in very recently, probably a couple of years ago. He will use that money in order to advance this project. So there's a high indication that he would want me to work on similar related product, and it seems like he's working on biomedical application and using RF hardwares for that. So it's a good indication of what's coming next, what is he interested on, and things like that. So you can do some stalking, I would say, in terms of funding and what his alumni is doing and things like that, and that will throw a very good picture. And these all things will help you in honing your application process. So when you're writing statement of purpose, resume, you will hone your resume or you sharpen your resume specifically for what might be the requirement for that professor. So these all things will help in your interview process as well. So I would again encourage doing that. Spend some time on this, both for course and thesis based. Thesis based master, this is very important. Or PhD, it is important. Course based master, it's not too important. But then, as Professor Ansari mentioned, there are other things which are important. You need to think about what jobs and what kind of place you want to work in, and salary, and what kind of skills you will require to get a job and things like that. So spend some time on that. So after you have gone through this entire process, then comes the part of you have now decided that this is the school I want to work, apply for. And if you're a thesis based master or PhD, you decided, apart from the school, I want to work in this research group as well from that school. So once you have done that, go to their graduate school and department website. There are sections over there. So for example, for fall 2021, which was basically admitted to this year, or this is not a recent snapshot, but you will get something for fall 2022 admission as well. You will see application prerequisites for that. So what are the bachelor's requirement? So look at those application prerequisites carefully, and see whether you satisfy those criteria. And these are the bare minimum criteria. That doesn't mean that you will get an admit, but it is the minimum thing. You at least need that to be considered into that program. I would also say that once you have determined a faculty member for thesis-based master or PhD, look at the faculty, whether the faculty members are diverse or not. So for example, if you decide you want to work under Professor Nick Najat from UC Berkeley, I would go and look at his his department and see how many people are working on similar areas. So if he's working on RF systems or hardware, I will see whether there are other professors who are working in that similar field. Why this is important is, during the course of master's or PhD, things happen. Anything could happen. You might not like that professor, or he might move, or something happens, or he might retire, or I don't know, something will happen or could happen. And there is a chance that you might have to move to another professor. So you should also keep that into account, that there are other professors who are working on similar field, and it might be more collaborative as well. If there are other professors, then he might be collaborating with that other professor. So keep that into account as well. So once you have determined what university you want to do, what professor it is, and things like that, again, for thesis based master and PhD, I would encourage you to make contacts with your prospective professor. So the assumption at this point is that you're familiar with the research of the professor you're contacting with. So prereq is familiar with his research. You have did some research on the individual, his profiles, and things like that. This is not important for course-based master because you're not applying for a professor. You're just applying for a course. So once you have determined the prereq for a university for course-based master, you can go ahead and prepare your application package, and I'll talk about what's there in the application package. But for a research-based student, for thesis-based master and PhD, I will encourage this section as well, along with when you have applied for that program. So some of the do's I would say over here is, use the information you have collected by reading the faculty profile, their papers, funding, etc. So this shows to a professor that you have done your research, you're really interested working under him, you're passionate about him. So spend some time on reading about that professor and try to mention that in subtle manner in your statement of purpose or in your email, that you have read about him and you're interested in this research. And I would say a well drafted communication will help get your faculty's attention, and you can use that information that you have amassed in your previous research, and can put that in your email. Have a very directed email, like how is the faculty research fitting with your interest, how does your past research experience helps you, and things like that. So don't try to send one blanket email to all the professors. It doesn't work like that, because these people will understand, they are dealing and reading those emails so many times. Like it's a very easy way to distinguish that, okay, you are sending a generalized email. So if you're really interested under working a professor, Once you have applied, contact that professor, tell them how your past research experience helped. Reveal some information about that faculty as well, that, oh, you have read about his funding or read about his profile and things like that. So what I would say still is, in a course based master, funding is the most challenging part. So you might not, I think 90% of the cases, you will not get funding for course based master, and you will have to pay money yourself or support yourself. I will talk that in the later part of the presentation, what it is for course-based master. But for thesis-based master and for PhD, the big advantage is you mostly get funding. Like almost all the cases, you will be funded by the professor. It might be 50% funding or even 100% funding, or even they will give you research assistantship to support your living in that place. So funding is not a big challenge for thesis-based master or PhD. So yeah, any should we pause for a couple of questions, Professor Ansari?
Just once. Yeah, so I think we are already in 1 hour and 15 minutes in the talk. So, and it's getting late in India. So we'll have to probably, you have to figure out how much more you have on the presentation. But we can certainly pause for questions at this stage if you think, you could answer, and then you can pick and choose what you want to cover for the rest of the presentation.
So I think what we could do is I'll move on and I will stop after the package and timeline is done, and then we can pause before I move to the Canada section. So
Sure,
I think that
sure.
will make more sense, and I can take the questions then.
Okay.
So we have decided now, for example, for research, you have contacted professor. Now think about application package. So what's an application package? We already revisited GPA. We visited the GRE requirements. Now comes the part of letter of recommendation. So GPA GRE is done. You know what kind of university you want to work with. If you're doing research, you know what professor you want to work with. You have figured out what kind of emails you will be sending to that professor. Then comes the part of letter of recommendation. This is very, very important. So you'll have to ask people to write you letter of recommendation. So what I would say is, ask letter from people with whom you have had more than casual contact. So someone who has worked, ideally you have worked under that professor for some time. So ask letter from them. Letter of recommendation in India is usually written by you. Like I have seen it, it's not common over here. Here, when you ask for a letter of recommendation, the professor is the one writing for you, and you don't play any role in that. In India, I've seen typically what happens is the professor is like, oh, write a letter and I might correct it, but I'll sign it. So if you're writing a letter of recommendation for yourself, you will need to, emphasize what you have done, say it in a descriptive manner, and and at least it should be agreeable to the professor who is signing it. So you should take that into account. So some of the good sources of letter of recommendation is your research and faculty advisor. So for example, you have worked in a project under a university professor, then get a letter of recommendation from him or her. And if you have done an internship, for example, or if someone knows you not just from academia but then from your internship experience, get a letter of recommendation from that person as well. So this is it's good to have a diverse set of recommendation letters. So not all the three letters should be from one department. If you can get one from your professor, get one from your intern supervisor, and get one from some of your course professor, where you have got really good grades and you have shown some great interest and he knows you very well and things like that. So some of the good sources are research and faculty advisor. Poor sources is don't ask from your friends or relatives or graduate students. So these are something which is not should not be done. The second part is statement of purpose. So letter of recommendation is done. Then comes the part of statement of purpose. So I cannot emphasize enough, they read the statement of purpose. So don't just write one statement of purpose for all the graduate program. You should tailor your statement of purpose to target a research group or target a university or target any course-based program. So you should mention things around why you are applying for that program, what attracts you to the program, what do you offer to the program, what's your short term and long term goal. Mention specific faculty of interest if you're applying for thesis or a research based program. So for example, you, you know, while you're going through this process, if you have already established contact with a professor, you have emailed that professor, he has shown some interest that okay, you might be suitable. Mention this in your statement of purpose that okay, I spoke to these people and they seem interested and things like that. So this shows you are involved. You're not just sending one statement of purpose to everyone. You have tailored your statement of purpose for that particular program. So it will be great if you had contact with the faculty. If not, still it's good. What I would still say is mentors like us, anyone in the SETI program, are always good and can be helpful in proofreading the statement of purpose. So if you want to proofread, if you want someone else to proofread this, send it to me or send it to someone in the program, send it to your like you know, some professor for example, and get some idea around is this good or not, what should I be making changes and things like that. So I think this is again an iterative process. You cannot get things done in one try. You might have to change, and that's okay, but feel free to ask questions and ask for help. Some of the do's and don'ts of statement of purpose, I would say is, do's I would say is you should write clearly, use concrete example. It will take you multiple revisions. Ask someone to critique. I mean, don't be like, oh, why are you saying this is not good and things like that. It's always get some critical feedback and then change those statement of purpose based on that. And then when you write the letter, read it as if you are from the admission committee and try to understand what they might be requiring and does it make sense or not. So these are some of the do's I would say. Some of the don'ts I would say is don't make up things. So I've seen statement of purpose, if you don't have much content in it, sometimes people are like, I was doing this and that's what I mean. It's not true, but you're just making up things. And it's easy for someone who is doing this every year to make out that you are making up things or you're writing, do making some lame excuses. So for example, if you have bad scores in something, you might be giving some reasonings for that. It is okay to give reasons, but then don't try to make lame excuses. It's easy for them to make out. And this is a statement of purpose where you are telling them you deserve to be in this program and you will be a good asset, and how your life experiences has made you suitable for that program, both for course based or thesis based. So make it like that. Don't write an autobiography of your life like you have done this in your life and then this and then this. So there needs to be a flow and it needs to achieve that purpose of how it makes you good for that program. So think in that manner. The next part come which come which is really important I would say is funding aspect. So I would still say, like, you know, self-funding. So there are three ways you can think about this. So for course-based master, self-funding is the mostly what you would be doing, self-funding or self-funding plus part-time job. So if you have money and you do not require assistantship, self-funding is the easiest way where you can mention that okay, I don't need funding, and it can help you in your application process because then they know you don't need funding and it's all good. They might just admit you because you will be not like you know, you will not go around and be like it is my admission is based on whether I can get funding or not. So but however, for most of us, that is not the case. I do realize that. So if self-funding is not there, for course-based master, you can also do part-time jobs. So I know, as a matter of fact, that you're allowed to do on-campus job part-time when you are admitted into a student like a course-based program. That could be like a 20-hour per week kind of job. And in summers, you can do a full-time job, like 40 hours per week. So this is a way to supplement your income and to sponsor yourself. and that's okay. Other avenue I would say is if you can apply for both teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So research assistantship will be difficult for a course-based master. You can still apply for teaching assistantship, and this basically you can indicate to your professor, or you can see it in the department application process whether they accept a course-based master student to apply for teaching assistantship. And the prerequisite for that is you have done previous courses on that, you have good grades in similar courses, you have done some lab work. So you can talk to your professors at that point. So for example, you are in a course-based master, you're doing your course-based master, you need to do, you need some funding, and you know this professor is teaching some undergraduate courses. You have established a good rapport with him. You can go and talk to him that I'm interested in doing some teaching assistantship. Can you help me get this assistantship? If the professor agrees, it's usually very easy to get it. So course-based master, they can still do it. For thesis-based master and for PhD, mostly you will get research assistantship. If not, then you have to apply for it. But for PhD, for sure, you get research assistantship, and that's the way to fund your program. But for to get a research assistantship, you need to write emails to your professor beforehand, tell them what kind of research you're interested in, take your chances, send your resume, relate to their research and things like that. And then they usually fund you if you're in a research based program. So you might be just getting teaching assistantship as well as research assistantship. Course based master, you need to probably fight a bit more to get that funding, because it is expected that you are funding yourself if you're applying for a course based program. But you have avenues of doing part-time job as well as doing teaching assistantship, applying for it, and so on and so forth. So last section I will say, and then I'll stop because I'm going to talk about the timeline here and the final application process. So again, for applying, we have gone through all the process: GRE, academics, statement of purposes, letter of recommendation, about funding, your resume, and things like that. This is all part of your application package. Once you have done that, you need to think about when should I be applying. So I would say apply early. So if the deadline for, so for example, for usual fall of 2022, the deadlines are December, end of December, something like that for international student, or first week of January, just something around that scenario. I know this for a fact that so most of the students who are applying now would be applying next year. So if you are applying for fall 2023, deadline would be around December 2022 or January 2023. So even though deadline is December, I know for a fact that all the thesis-based program and research-based program, the decisions are usually made around November before they go for vacations. So I would encourage, the ideal timeline is around October or so. So I'm going to show the timeline, but think about this, that you do not have to stick to that timeline. Applying early will not harm your application. So apply early because stuff happens. Some of the stuff that happens is you apply and then you get an email back from the committee that, oh, your package is not complete. You need to add this and send it to us, and this will again take some time, right? So you need to do that, this, and this happened to me as well, but I fortunately applied like a couple of months before the deadline, so it was all good. Sometimes the professor forgets to mail recommendation letter, so sometimes they have like an online portal where a professor goes in and they are like writing recommendation letter for you, and they forget and you're not able to contact your Indian professor, and if that is not done, their package is not complete. So you might need to do some back and forth. So I would say in order to do that back and forth, you need to keep some buffer. So it's always good to apply early, and then be prepared for application fees. So the application fees generally is usually 50 to $100 for each university. Again, and that's why there's a restriction. You should not apply for more than, like, I think 8 to 9 universities or more than that, because you're restricted by the amount of money you would spend. And then you need to write statement of purpose. You need to hone the application package for each university, right? So you cannot spend all your time on like all the universities. So rather than that, spend some quality time and effort on 8 universities, and so that's why I would say target some amount of university. You will be ready to pay some application fee. I would also like to point out that some school will waive the application fee based on a letter from your college or financial need. So feel free to ask them. So for example, you want to apply for some good university and now you're out of budget. You don't have that much money. Your economic condition is not that you can support for all the colleges like application fees. So feel free to ask them, how can I waive the fee? They might ask you to show some financial document, and that's okay. But don't be afraid of asking. There is no harm in asking. They are very responsive. The graduate committee, graduate admission coordinator, and this in no way will harm your application process. So go ahead and do that. And this is the application timeline, which I have taken from one of the blog, and I kind of agree with this timeline. What I would say, and I'll spend some time on this slide. What I would say is this is the timeline I've taken, pre-COVID per se, and I've taken this from one of the blog of a student who applied for fall admission. And what is indicative in this slide is thing about this is you cannot defer this date any further. So, for example, for most of the colleges in US, Canada, universities, November, December is the deadline. So this is the bare maximum you can prolong your application. I would encourage you to think about this 2 months before is the deadline. So instead of December, think about October 2021. If you're applying for 2023 fall, your deadline would be October 2022. So apply before October 2022 just to make sure you have enough buffer. He has said it needs around 3 to 4 months for GRE preparation. I would say it takes around 6 months. So start preparing at least 6 months before you want to apply, for GRE. Give your GRE exam at least like a month or two before you actually submit the application file. And the reason I'm saying that is it takes some time for your GRE scores to come as an official score. They will take some time to grade your essay and things like that. So it takes time, and so take that into account as well. So think about if you're applying in November 2020, you should be done with your GRE by September of 2020 for sure. For sure, bare minimum. So if you're doing, for example, fall 2023, so be done with your application process, everything by November 2022. Be done with your GRE at least 2 months before that. So something around September, October time frame. And 1 month after that, just apply and then keep some buffer during that time. And then preparation of GRE is at least 6 months, what I would encourage. Also, you have to give your TOEFL for sure. So for Canadian university, you don't need GRE, but you need to give TOEFL or IELTS. Anything is okay. Like you can give either of those. And what I would say is then you will get the admission letter around this March, April time frame. Then you have to go through the visa process and all of those things. So it does take some time after those things. One thing I will again point out is there is a lot of flexibility in US, Canada, and whatever emails you will be asking and telling them that I don't have this and what should I do about this, they will be responsive. So don't feel free to ask them if you have really some questions which needs to be answered. Don't just apply without just assuming things. If you have questions, ask them, and it's better to clear that up before applying for the process. And for students who are applying, who are right now in third year, first semester, and who will be doing third year, second semester next year, basically, they will consider transcripts, whatever is available for your application process. So sometimes, for in my case, they just consider third year, first semester grades for their application process. If you have transcript for third year, second semester, they will consider that. If not, they will not consider it. So it really changes based on whatever is available at that time. If there are cases where your university has not done exams or you're not able to get transcript for that semester or things like that, you can always ask the admission graduate coordinator, student coordinator, and they will advise you accordingly. So feel free to ask them. There is a graduate coordinator assigned for each university. So there is a person whose job is to answer your questions and make sure you have everything and coordinate all those parts. So feel free to ask them. Okay, so I think this is a good time to pause, and I just have a couple more slides for Canada, and that will not take more than 5 minutes. But I think we can take some time for questions.
If you have just couple of slides, why don't you just finish on the Canada thing and then we'll end with some questions because it's already like, quite late. So,
Okay, let's do that. So whatever I've talked about, all those things are required for Canadian universities. The only thing is GRE is not required for most of the university, but the admission process is very similar for US Canada. So what I've encouraged other other of my mentees and even my friend and family is when you're applying for US university, there's no harm in applying for one or two Canadian universities. So if your focus is US, that's okay, but apply for one or two Canadian university as well. And the other way around, if you're applying only for Canadian university, apply for a couple of US universities as well, just to keep that balance of application. So just wanted to give you an overview. The ecosystem is Canada. They also have really good universities, top ranked universities. Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, Alberta, every province has universities. Some of the universities like University of Toronto, University of Waterloo, University of British Columbia, University of Alberta, Calgary. These are McGill University. These are very good universities, world rank as well, top 50 per se. For computer science program, for electrical engineering program, University of Waterloo is one of the top 20 ranked university. And so I would say Canada has a very healthy ecosystem of these universities. And some of the motivation of why study in Canada is it has some top institute. The visa process in Canada is very easy compared to US. Sometimes US can be a big hassle going through this F1 visa. Usually, if you are funded, then F1 visa and all those things are not a problem for US. If you're not a funded student, if you're doing a course-based master, sometimes the visa process can be a hassle. They will see your economic condition. They might ask you a lot of questions in US. Canada is usually much easier. Canada has much affordable tuition and living expenses. So if you're not a funded student, fully funded, and you have economic constraint, I would say Canada is a good option because the tuition fees are much lesser than US, and then you get quality education as well. And they have open work permit and immigration opportunities, so it is much easy to immigrate in Canada versus US. And Canada is more multicultural than US. So you will quickly realize Canada has lot of international students. Canadian citizens are a lot of people who have immigrated from other countries. So the environment is very multicultural and is a bit different than US environment. Uh, some direct comparison with USA, I would say, is Canadian university. The admission process is very much like USA, as I've pointed out, same process, statement of purpose, letter of recommendation, academics, everything is same, funding similar. The process is very similar. The research opportunities, it vary based on the field. So for example, Waterloo, University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, McGill, University of British Columbia, University of Alberta, these are like top 5 universities in Canada. Some of the, so for example, McGill might be good for some programs. Waterloo is very good for machine learning based program. Waterloo is good for electrical engineering program. And then there are some other universities like University of British Columbia, which might be really good for some other programs. So you can do some research and then find out which field is suitable for what universities. The tuition fee is much cheaper. I would say very cheap in Canada compared to US. So if you're a self-funded student, Canada is a very what do you say is a strong candidate if you really want to do a course-based master, and you are constrained by economic like you're not able to pay that much fees and things like that. And the housing and living expense in Canada is cheaper as well. So even looking at the conversion rate, right? So Indian rupees to Canadian dollar and Indian rupees to US dollar, Canadian dollar is much cheaper. Housing and living expense is generally cheaper than USA in Canada. The job opportunities, I would say, is something which differs. So job opportunities in US is much more than Canada. Even though Canada is good, like in that manner, you can find jobs, but then nothing can beat US in terms of companies, startup culture. You will find jobs very easily after internship in US, and that can help you sustain your funding. Finding job in Canada might be a challenge. So again, but then they give you open work permit for multiple years. So that's how. So it's a balance. You need to do a research on what's your end goal. If you just want to study and come back to India, Canada might be a really good choice, quality education. If you want to spend the rest of your life abroad, even though US is a good, it might be a big investment wise, you're spending money, but long term you can find a job and probably you can immigrate as well after a couple of years or 5 years or 10 years down the line. Canada, it has a lot of advantages, but then there are disadvantages. So job is not as good as US, but still, if you're a good student, you will find a job. So talk to your alumni, talk to friends and family, and make a decision at that point. And immigration in Canada is much easier than USA. I cannot emphasize this enough. Like I've seen some of my Indian friends, really smart, but they are waiting in this green card process for tens of years, 10 years, and still they are waiting for the green card to appear. So I mean, it takes time, but then you also have benefits in USA as well. So again, it's all a balance. Like immigration in Canada is easier, but then job opportunities might not be as good as US, but then this is better in US versus Canada. So you need to take everything into account. And bare minimum, I would suggest apply for both Canadian US university. Select three top universities, select three lower rank universities, select three average universities just to keep a balance, and keep one or two Canadian universities into account. And the final slide is this one. This is just the overall summary and tip. Again, I cannot emphasize enough. Start early and apply very early. GRE score is very important, and do not apply to only top school. I mean, I just said that apply to high, mid, and relatively low rank university as well. Because even if you have the best GPA, best GRE, everything is really good, that does not guarantee you an admission, right? So they have different admission criterias. It really depends on what programs they are looking to fill in and things like that. So just to keep balance of everything, apply to high, mid, and low tier kind of universities. Contact your professor for research based program if you can. Keep the correspondence active until the end. So professors sometimes change their mind. So even if they might have agreed something, some things might have changed, and they might I don't know. Like if your admission is accepted, then it's all good. But if your professor showed interest in you, and he's like, okay, I'll select you, that doesn't guarantee he will select you. So keep it active, talk to them, keep it concise. Many students contact the professor, just not you. So just think that into account. You're competing with a big pool of students. Keep your communication brief, concise, and quantitative. Don't just mail for the sake of mailing. And the last thing I want to say is your career prospect does not just depend on admission to the university. So, for example, I get into University of Waterloo, for example, or some really good university over here, University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley over here. That doesn't mean that that's it. Like I'm gonna get the best job possible because I am in this university. Not at all. I would say it depends a lot on your performance, how collaborative your research is, how well you're doing in your courses. So you again have to go through the same cycle. If you are doing a master course-based program, if you do not have good grades in your masters, you will not. It's very difficult for you to find a job, even if you are from a good university. So it's not the end of the road. It's again a process. So keep that into account, and this is not the end of the world, I would say. So yeah, so these things all play into account. So yeah, that's it. The questions.
Thanks, Zohaib. You can stop sharing maybe, and then we can just open it up for a few questions if somebody has, and we'll otherwise wind up soon. You can unmute yourselves. and ask any question that you may have. Anybody?
Hi, I'm Abdulaziz from MJ.
Yes,
You
Abdulaziz.
combined master's plus PhD, right? And that course usually takes more than 6 years. So if someone decides to leave in between, can they do that?
Yeah. So good question. So I would say combined master plus PhD, 6 years could be. It could be 4 years as well. So I actually did combined master PhD. It took me 4 years to do combined masters and PhD. So when you say combined master PhD, it means that you will not get a master's degree. You are enrolled in a master's program, and then after 1 year, they see that you're a suitable candidate and they enroll you to a PhD program. So it's a direct transfer to PhD program. It very much happens. Like, I mean, there are cases, I know a couple of my friends, they got into masters, first year they did master, second year they got transferred to PhD. By the end of second year, they realized they don't want to do this for another 3 years. It's so boring and they're not interested in this. They just want to find a job. You can talk to your professor and just defend whatever you have done as your master. So get a thesis based master or get a master's degree at the end of second year and not continue with your PhD. So you have a lot of flexibility towards that end. So yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, the only thing to keep in mind is that if you're trying to trick the system, it may not work. So in the sense that you enter as a PhD student without any tuition and then you want to get out with an MS, that may be difficult sometimes. So you have to keep that in mind.
Got it. Thanks, sir.
Sir, I have a question. I wanted to ask if you are writing GRE in your engineering days, engineering years, and then after engineering, after 2 or 3 years, completing engineering, can you use the same score of GRE, or should you write the exam again and then go for it?
Yeah, I think GRE score, I don't know the exact number. It's valid for multiple years. So I think even like 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah, at least 3 years, maybe more, depending on, you have to look, it is clearly written on the GRE, website, but it is valid for multiple years. The only thing to keep in mind is that, you should write it when you are best prepared.
Okay. Thank you.
कोई और question है?
Okay, sir. So, sir, I'm Mohammed Zan, and I'm doing my BTech from ZHCT. So as Zohaib sir was saying that it's more important to look up research groups if you're applying for a MS through thesis. But sir, what if the ranking of the universities is something around 600 or 500, and but their research group is really good. It's among the topmost in the world. So how do I balance between those two things, ranking of the university and how good the research group is doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's a good, I mean, you need to balance. So for example, if it's the top ranked university, but the research group is very average, I would be I would not be encouraged. But then if the university is really low ranked, but then the research group is really good, um, so it is a balance. Like I understand it's a difficult question, but I think what is more important if you're doing a PhD is your research group is extremely important because you are going there every day for 5 6 years of your life. If you don't have good rapport with your professor, if you don't like your research group, then you cannot complete. It's very difficult. I've seen people who become depressed, after a couple of years that I don't want to do this anymore. So I would say research group is extremely important for your development as well as for your career. I mean, it's a good question to ask. I would say if you have decided you want to work in that under that professor, he's not from a good university. It's a good question to ask. It's a fair question to ask. What are the? It's a fair question to see whether what their alumni are doing. So it's a thing people are graduating. So 5 years down the line, are they working in some company or are they struggling to find a job? So you need to do your research towards that end. But again, I would say it's a balance. Like you need to take into account ranking of university, your research group, what your alumni has done, what you are interested in, what are the job opportunities for that field. So take everything
Yeah.
into account, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, adding to Zohaib's, what he already mentioned, the most important thing I would think there is, what do people do after finishing their PhD in that particular place? The professor may be great, but if you don't get either an academic option or if your industry options are very limited, I would not advise you to go there. So, any other questions? Looks good, Zohaib. So I think we should end now. Since there are no other questions, thank you very much. Very informative, very detailed, and I think students will benefit from having your presentation. So we'll try to share it with them in terms of the actual PowerPoint or, so. And if you have any other questions, reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer your questions. I think just a very, very quick summary. The most important thing for you guys would be to start early, do well on your GRE, focus on your grades between now and when you apply, so that you improve your GPA if it is not good. If it is already good, maintain your GPA. And also, don't forget to aim high. So again, some good universities, some middle tier, and some safety schools. So with that, I think we should end now. Okay.
Yeah.
Zohaib, you have the last word.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ansari, for inviting me to present. And as I mentioned, feel free to contact me if you need help in proofreading. Feel free to ask your mentors. They are very experienced. They can help you in preparing your application, resume, statement of purpose. So we are there for helping you. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, and in fact, that offer goes for me also, in the sense that you can always feel free to contact me. And I would be happy to help you, even though the mentoring program would be over by the time you apply for you guys. But you can always reach out to me or Zohaib, or I'm sure any other mentor. We have Asra Yasmin also on this Zoom call. So we would be very happy to help you anytime. Okay. So Khalil, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, everyone.